everyone. Good afternoon, everyone. So today's event is hosted by the FAPA Industrial Pharmacy and Marketing section as a part of a series of activities that aim to tackle the issue of drug shortage by leading and collaborating with different groups. So earlier this year, the FAPA section, led by its chair, Ms. Rosie Barangan, implemented a regional survey in partnership with the University of the Philippines College of Pharmacy to examine the various quality and manufacturing issues that influence drug shortage. So later, we are fortunate to have one of the proponents of the study, Professor Joy Palakpak, to present the results of this survey. This study was based on the global survey conducted by the International Society of Pharmaceutical Engineering, which collaborated with the FAPA Industrial Pharmacy section through the ISBE Philippines affiliate so that we can generate more information from the Asian region. FAPA's network of pharmacists working in the industry as well as other sectors such as government, patient care, and academia can help in pushing and developing these initiatives to address global health problems such as drug shortages. We thank ISBE Philippines, Ms. Vivian Santillan, for connecting us to ISBE and supporting these activities, and Ms. Diane Houston, who will be sharing with us a presentation on the initiatives of ISBE to address drug shortage. The next phase for FAPA will involve taking a look at the impacts and strategies to mitigate drug shortage in the patient care settings, such as hospital and community pharmacies. Expect that in the coming months, joint initiatives between FAPA Industrial Pharmacy and Marketing, hospital and clinical pharmacy, and community pharmacy sections will be announced, such as a next round of surveys, this time for hospital and community pharmacists. So today, we are also fortunate to have with us our hospital and clinical pharmacy section chairperson, Dr. Yuli Chang from Taiwan, who is very keen on cooperation activities not only between the different practice settings, but also among different Asian countries. So hopefully we can learn from the best practice models that they have in Taiwan to monitor and mitigate drug shortage at different levels. In 2022, next year, FAPA will hold its next FAPA Congress in November, and all developments regarding these issues will be reported and presented in our section meetings. We hope to see all of you, our participants, there in next year's Congress. And through these activities, we can spark ideas and opportunities for collaboration to solve the complex problem of drug shortages. We also thank our partner, the PPHA, for hosting this webinar and supporting the FAPA Industrial Pharmacy and Marketing section activities since 2019 and until the end of the term next year, 2022. So this event is actually also a part of the series of webinars of PPHA in the research section, which is now in its fourth and final week. They have arranged for this event to have CPD units for Filipino pharmacists. So there will be two certificates for this event, one from FAPA and one from PPHA for Filipino participants. Don't forget to immediately fill out the evaluation form at the end of the webinar if you wish to claim your certificates. For this webinar, the evaluation form will be open until 11:59 p.m. tonight, and it will be flashed on the last slide. You will find the link on the last slide, and we will also post it in the chat box as the webinar ends. So this session will have three speakers, three presentations, and then there will be a question and answer portion. And before we end, we will have a panel discussion to share some insights from various stakeholders represented by our distinguished panelists. So I hope you enjoy the things that we prepared for this afternoon. And without further ado, let's start with the first presentation. So our first speaker is Ms. Diane Husted. She is a biochemist and an advanced pharmaceutical regulatory affairs leader with over 30 years of experience in the industry, spending over 24 years at Merck Sharp and Dohme Corporation, where she formerly held roles in labeling, regulatory operations, pharmaceutical CMC, quality auditing, and bioanalytical and bioprocess research. At present, she serves as the director rather, of the U.S. Regulatory Affairs of MSD, leading interactions with the CDER FDA drug shortage staff regarding drug shortages and discontinuations. She also serves as an internal expert to guide strategy and execution for various U.S. regulatory activities and the chief of staff for functional area within regulatory affairs. She also engages with industry and health authorities to advance drug shortage regulatory topics. Ms. Diane Husted is also the chairperson of the Drug Shortage Initiative Team of the International Society for Pharmaceutical Engineering. So I'll transfer the screen to her presentation right now. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Diane Husted, and I'm the chair of the Drug Shortage Initiative Team of ISBE. And I'm here today to talk to you about the global landscape of drug shortage prevention. Before I get started, I would like to say a sincere thank you to the Federation of Asian Pharmaceutical Associations, the Philippine Pharmacists Association, Vivian Satilian, and Rosie Barangan for a very thoughtful and appreciated invitation to be here today with you. With that, I'm going to get started. And first, I would like to share with you a little bit of information about ISBE as an organization. ISBE is an international society for pharmaceutical engineering. It's a not-for-profit association, and we serve members by leading scientific, technical, and regulatory advancement throughout the entire pharmaceutical life cycle. And on the slide, you can see a sampling of some of the work we do. On the top of the screen, you can see the different guidelines that we've authored. And on the bottom, you can see a sampling of our publication that is available in print copy as well as online. And you can see from the headlines on the pharmaceutical engineering publication that we cover a wide range of important topics for our industry. So please do check out our ISBE website for more information. Our members represent all facets of the pharmaceutical industry. We're not just manufacturers in pharma, biotech, or generics, but we're also suppliers and service providers, academia, those that are in and around the architectural or construction for the pharmaceutical industry, contract manufacturing organizations, and very importantly, global regulators. So now I'd like to segue back to the topic for today, which is the global landscape of drug shortage prevention. And I'd like to ground our conversation around what are the factors contributing to drug shortages. You can see a sampling of of root causes listed in this figure. Importantly, you see quality issues in the center. That has been a long-standing reason for supply disruptions and a prominent reason for supply disruptions. It is quite often cited as the most significant reason for supply disruptions. However, in the past couple of years, the complexity of our supply chain, the international connections with our supply chains. In other words, we don't just have manufacturing in one country. We have perhaps the raw materials sourced from one, the API manufacturing completed in another, and finished product manufacturing and packaging possibly in a third. That's just one variation on hundreds of themes. And so because our supply chain has become quite complex, when it was stressed due to the COVID pandemic, it really created some very significant industry-wide challenges. So again, quality issues has always been and probably will continue to remain a big challenge for the industry, now sort of rivaling that cause is our supply chain complexity. And you can see large-scale events of other types, could be hurricanes, could be cyber attacks, can also contribute to shortages. And I will offer up two regulatory challenges can be quite problematic for companies and create supply disruptions. And lastly, I'll just call out, sometimes the market is unpredictable. Either demand fluctuates or possibly demand fluctuates as a result of another company withdrawing their product from the market. So a lot of the factors contributing to drug shortages are unpredictable, which makes the space of drug shortage prevention quite difficult. Another reason supply disruptions have complexity to them in terms of drug shortage prevention is the fact that we have many nodes in the supply chain. And while a manufacturer, which you can see here is in the second node of this particular diagram, while they typically do have emergency and business continuity plans, things happen that you may not have predicted, you may not have planned for, and sometimes supply disruptions happen outside of the control of the manufacturer. So it is certainly not a situation where there is one root cause and we need to work toward a better solution there. It's simply there are many contributing factors to supply disruptions, and they can occur throughout the supply chain. And so we need to be mindful of that as a community when we think about the most impactful ways to improve our drug shortage prevention activities. On this slide, you can see a little bit of the history of the Drug Shortage Initiative team. Again, I chair that team. It was formed in July of 2012, and the foundational work for this initiative was completed in 2014 with the Drug Shortages Prevention Plan. You can see the front page of that plan here on the slide. And that plan articulated 6 dimensions of manufacturing and the pharmaceutical industry that are very important to preventing drug shortages. And you can see those 6 dimensions in the figure in the middle of this slide. The current team is focusing on the business continuity planning dimension that you see at the very bottom, as well as the communications with authorities, which is right next to it. There's also one other tool I'd like to bring to your attention. It's called the Drug Shortage Assessment and Prevention Tool. That came out in 2015, and it helps guide you through the expectations in each of those 6 dimensions. So it helps, it provides a more roadmap, if you will, to how you can best assess your performance in those spaces and how you can improve. All right, so I mentioned there are 2 areas that our team is currently focusing on. One of those areas is health authority communication. So I'd like to take a few minutes to talk about what are health authority communications? Because it doesn't happen in all markets. I do want to acknowledge that not every market have these requirements. However, for the markets that do, typically health authority communications regarding a shortage event follow the path you see here. So once a supply disruption or potential supply disruption has been confirmed, then the health authority will be notified. Possibly customer and stakeholder notifications will occur too. It depends on the magnitude of the event and the product involved. After those initial notifications are made, then there will be ongoing updates and ultimately at some later date closure of that communication and event with the health authorities once the supply has been restored and the issue has resolved. And then finally, after it has been resolved, it's a time for reflection to see if there was anything that could have been done better, anything that should be done going forward. So this is the flow of good constructive health authority communications and interactions. And as an industry, if we are doing this well and providing this information to health authorities as soon as possible, we'll be able to get the best help that they can provide for any particular event. And so I'd like to describe a little bit of what health authorities may be able to do in some of these drug shortage events. Some health authorities really do have some very important opportunities to help us when there may be a supply disruption challenge. It's really important, as I had described in the last slide, to give them that communication about what is going to happen and give it to them early enough, because if they can help you with any of these activities that are shown here, they'll have the best chance to do that if they're notified as early as possible. So let me walk you through some of the activities that they can help with. Certainly at the top of this figure, you can see they can help you determine the best mitigation strategy. You know, ultimately, it's going to be the company's accountability to take the next steps. However, if the next steps require some interaction with the health authority, maybe it's a post-approval change, perhaps it's an inspection of that sort. It's really important to start a constructive dialogue with the health authority to see if there's any perspective they may share that would help you further develop your mitigation strategy in a successful way. The health authorities, like I mentioned, can expedite post-approval changes or expedite inspections. They can also facilitate with import or exports. They might expand access to alternate or investigational drugs temporarily. As we've seen in COVID, they have, significantly accelerated approval of new therapies or alternate therapies that may help for the situation. They can also align with the company on a communication plan. In other words, if the health authority may want to post information on their website, they, in our experience, will work with the companies to align on that communication to ensure that the company communications are also aligned with the health authority communications. It's very important to have that consistency for the customer to not create any confusion. And then lastly, but certainly not least, they have the potential to apply enforcement discretion. And that is their ability to enforce select regulatory provisions as they currently apply to certain manufacturing entities or activities. In other words, or said more plainly, they could, in some circumstances, when the benefit risk profile is appropriate, allow for a temporary alternate approach to something that you may have in your manufacturing application. This is not something that a company can do on their own. This is certainly something that has to be a dialogue with the health authority, but it is really important to have those discussions, and where they can help, it can be extremely helpful in terms of either preventing a supply disruption or mitigating the length of a supply disruption. So for those markets where you have an opportunity to have an interaction about a shortage event, I do encourage you to do so, because it really can help significantly in terms of drug shortage prevention or mitigation of an ongoing event. All right, so health authority communications really occur as an event are happening or after it has happened, in terms of updates. And the communications I just spoke to are in that space of sort of after event or concurrent with an event. So I'd like to switch gears and talk about preventive action, pre-planning and business continuity planning in advance of a potential event. This diagram that you see on this slide is taken from one of our ISP articles that the Drug Shortage Initiative team authored, and it shows the high-level steps, the high-level best practices involved in business continuity planning to prevent drug shortages. So I'm going to walk you through that process. And first, we want to think about what the product we're evaluating is and what it is used for. Some products merit more rigorous business continuity planning than others. And I want to highlight that it's a really difficult activity to predict what may create a supply disruption. And often we can't predict it. I don't think anyone in 2018 would say we are on the cusp of a global pandemic, and yet we were. So there is really a very real need to make sure that we focus our limited resources available for the what if scenarios. We need to focus those resources on where it makes the most sense. And so that is why establishing the product priority is one of the very first steps that you need to consider. Considering the indication, considering the amount of manufacturers that are making the same product. Are there alternate therapies? Is it used in a hospital setting versus a home setting? There are many things to consider when you're thinking about the priority. So that is one of the first steps that needs to be done. Then after you've kind of established that product priority, you know what you're working with, then you need to assess all of the risks to supply. And there are a number of resources, I'll get to that a little bit later, to help you do that. And once you identify the greatest risks, you can work on developing your mitigation options. And those mitigation options should align with the type of product and the level of risk that you see. And then lastly, you can see in the bubble at the bottom, you will implement and execute your response plans. And I think the most important message here on this entire process is that it's a never-ending cycle. And that is what is shown in the outer ring in this figure, that you'll need to continually monitor and refresh. You may not have had any generic competition 2 years ago, and now you do, or vice versa. You might have not had, you might have had generic competition and now you don't, right? So that creates a very different landscape for your product and the importance of your product in terms of not being available to the patient. And so it's so important that you do this business continuity planning thoroughly, but you also revisit it periodically so that you can ensure that you update and make appropriate provisions through the life cycle of the product itself. One more thing I want to highlight here is that communication with health authorities in this whole process is very important. Just like communication with health authorities is important during an event, it is important to also be aware of their expectations for business continuity planning. Those are evolving. If you have not noticed or not been impacted yet, there are actual regulatory expectations now, both in the United States and in France, for business continuity planning. There's a lot of discussion about business continuity planning because of COVID. And so it's likely that it will continue and increase. So it's important that you know what the health authorities expect. And it's also important that you check in with them and understand if your business continuity plans meet their expectations. So that is something absolutely to consider. This next slide shows you the ever important link to the ICH Q9 document. The ICH guideline for quality risk management is just an excellent resource for you to reference for risk assessments, for risk control, risk review, and certainly risk communication. And the whole process that I explained to you that ISPE has outlined as best practices for business continuity planning is grounded and connected to these concepts that are described in ICH Q9. So I would offer up that that is definitely a resource that you should check out, as well as be aware that that is under evaluation right now for revisions. And so also keep an eye on the developments thereof. All right, so this particular slide, I would like to talk to you a little bit about mitigation options for business continuity planning in general. I think most of us have heard of redundancy, having a second manufacturing site, a second packaging site, having a second component available, having a second whatever available, essentially. Redundancy is that. Stockpiling, I think, is an even more familiar concept, right? Just having a little extra that you keep back in case demand fluctuates. Whether you stockpile your API, your raw material, or your finished product, it's essentially stockpiling. Stockpiling and redundancy are really very reliable, predictable, well-defined, expected outcomes. They are very expensive, and they also can create complexity with quality. If you have a backup facility, you also have to ensure that backup facility is in your registration, meets expectations for current GMP, and goes through any change control that may be necessary over the lifetime of that registered site. And if you would have that for every single product, for every single step, it would create an enormous amount of overhead. It's simply not realistic for business, and it's not, I don't think, the best approach in terms of quality, because you're going to create a lot of extra complexity in the system, and you may not use any of those designated backups, right? Again, we have to return to the fact that these situations are often unpredictable and often don't occur as we envision they may. So redundancy and stockpiling is absolutely important. I'm not saying don't do it. What I'm saying is that it is something that needs to be applied for appropriate business continuity planning situations. On the other end of the spectrum are agility opportunities. These are more flexible arrangements. So think about, manufacturing line capacity, the ability to flex the amount that you can manufacture on a line, or change out the lines more quickly, or have a partnership with an external contract manufacturing organization where you could start or restart a process with them rather quickly. Instead of starting from scratch, you would have perhaps some of the elements of the process already established, qualification, validation, and you would maybe need to just incorporate some new expectations to get that running. So those are the types of things with agility. Agility is also the capability to see when demand fluctuates significantly and cascade that information across the organization so that you can increase your production to keep in pace with the anticipated increases or experienced increases in demand. So agility has this great flexibility to it. There are multiple options that are predefined, but it is dynamic and certainly more cost effective than the other end of the spectrum with redundancy or stockpiling. However, it has a potential for the unexpected because you have some of the processes outlined, but maybe not fully complete in advance of a situation. When you go forward to finish the validation or finish the qualification or whatever the case may be, you may find something that is unexpected and causes maybe a little bit longer time frame to implement that backup plan. So really the recommendation in terms of best practices is to, and let me just go back one slide. When you are developing your mitigation options, you need to think about the risk to supply. You need to think about the product priority, and then really apply the best approach and the best blend between the redundancy and stockpiling and the agility. Okay. That was a lot of information that I shared with you, and some of you may not be as familiar with the manufacturing perspectives. So I do encourage you to look at the resources and the regulatory guidance that are available out there for you. A lot of the figures, I think all of the figures I shared in this particular presentation are from some ISPE documents that I'll have for you at the end of the presentation, or the references will be available at the end of the presentation. But here on this table, you can see the documents industry-wide that are available and certainly very important foundational works. The other important aspect to note on this table was published in early 2020 before the pandemic arrived in full swing. And what you can see is a lot of work in drug shortages occurred before COVID, and it's really important to keep that in mind. Shortages have been a challenge, at least since the early 2000s. And as an industry, we've been making a lot of progress in this space. I think what COVID taught us is that there's more to do, and there is certainly more to consider now that our supply chains have become a global and quite complex outlook that they are at this time. So this is the guidance documents that I would bring your attention to. And I also want to share a little bit more about before COVID. What were the opportunities that we saw before COVID? And that's shown on this slide here. So the items you can see in this arrow were all topics that we were considering on this journey as an industry, and health authorities as well. I think they've been in lockstep with us in terms of trying to identify opportunities to improve drug shortage prevention. So before 2020, these were all the ideas that were circulating as potential opportunities to help increase. And there's more. These are just the hottest topics that were circulating in about the 2019 timeframe. I do want to highlight that ISPE does not address financial, business, or political perspectives of drug shortage prevention. So the items here that were in the red section of this arrow are out of the scope of ISPE, but certainly the items in the yellow and the green section are in scope, and a lot of progress actually has been made. I'd like to show you that since COVID-19 arrived, there has been a tremendous amount of attention on these opportunities, and I think great progress, both from an industry and a health authority perspective, on how to improve in these various spaces. There is one check missing though, and that is in that box about harmonizing shortage reporting and mitigation approaches. So I would like to take a moment here before I close to talk to you about that. I mentioned earlier in the top how important it is to evaluate your product priority. Is there, a generic available? Are there multiple suppliers? Are there alternate therapies? What is the indication? Is it a pediatric oncology product or is it a hair loss product, right? There's two different landscapes there when you think about the importance. I'm not suggesting that any product isn't important. I'm just reflecting that there are some products that when there's a supply disruption have a very critical impact that can be life-threatening. And so when we think about how to use our resources to do proactive business continuity planning to prevent drug shortages, we need to think about where best to focus our attention. And so the questions we typically ask when we're establishing a product priority is the therapeutic importance of the product, but also the regulatory requirements. And naturally, some business significance will be considered as well. And so the topic of prioritization and how right now it's becoming potentially problematic, uh, that is related to the fact that the definitions and the expectations for drug shortage prevention have happened over a period of 10 to 20 years. And they've happened in various markets that have had interest in the capacity uh, to work toward better drug shortage prevention. And as a result, organically, different definitions and different expectations in different parts of the globe have evolved. And I think, right now, my favorite quote is from an Anvisa regulator. He was speaking in an ISPE annual meeting presentation a couple of years ago. And he mentioned that if everything is a priority, nothing is a priority. And it's just such a great way to think about it. And so you can see here on the left this quote that we feel at ISPE that the area of drug shortages could be profoundly improved and generate more successful business cases and continuity plans if that starting question of which products to prioritize for business continuity measures could be clearly and consistently answered globally. So I think the message is that if there are too many variations on what is an important product and too many variations on actions required around different products, then when you look at our decision questions here on how to assess priority, the yeses will be far weighted over in the regulatory requirements question over the no's, and then you're going to start tipping the scales toward always needing a business continuity planning for all products, and it's just simply not sustainable or feasible for every product in every company to have an exhaustive backup plan for situations that may or may not occur. So I do really want to highlight that the industry has done a fantastic job in terms of improving practices around drug shortage prevention and keeping an eye on the supply chain complexity, and certainly with some of the quality maturity model efforts, improving upon quality and reliability thereof to ensure supply. So I really don't want to give an incorrect idea that we aren't making progress. We are making a lot of progress. And I thank anybody in the audience today who does this work. It's not easy, and we have done excellent things. I'm in my position, in my role as chair for the ISPE Drug Shortage Initiative team, I often hear directly from patients and families of patients and the impact that we make when we ensure continuity of supply is tremendous. And so in that journey toward even better reliability for supply continuity, our ISPE Drug Shortage Initiative team will continue to share and improve upon the best practices for health authority communications and business continuity planning. We'll continue to assist ISP membership with adapting to evolving requirements. And we offer platforms to progress discussions around continuity of supply of essential medicines so that we can really be best poised to address the challenges that we face, the regulatory expectations that are so appropriately need to be met, and most importantly, ensure that our patients get the medications that they need. So with that, I am going to close this presentation and again say a warm thank you to the audience for allowing me to share with you a little bit about our work, about what we do. I would also again like to thank the Federation of Asian Pharmaceutical Associations and the Philippine Pharmacists Association for having me here today. And I invite anybody in the audience to visit our ISPE website. You can find these references there at the ISPE website, all except for, I believe I also put the ICH-Q9. That's not on the ISPE website, but that's on the ICH website. But our ISPE website has all of this information and far more on many topics in the pharmaceutical industry. So I do hope you will visit, and please reach out if you have any input for our drug shortage initiative team. We are actively working on new resources for best practices in business continuity planning to prevent drug shortages, and we would welcome your input and participation in that next phase of our initiative. So with that, I will end and thank you again and have a great rest of your conference.
That was a comprehensive presentation on drug shortage. Thank you very much. I would like to thank Ms. Diane Houston for sending us her presentation. As we know, it's Thanksgiving today in the US and it's also past 3 in the morning there. So for questions about her presentation, our representative from ISP Philippines affiliate, Ms. Vivian Santillan, would be answering later in the Q&A. I think many of us can relate with the struggle, especially during the early parts of the pandemic and during surges where our family and friends are trying to ask us pharmacists where to find drugs that they cannot find. So now that we have more ideas about the different stakeholders that we need to cooperate with to prevent drug shortages and the different ways of addressing drug shortages, even when there is no pandemic, as well as the practical considerations in selecting the appropriate solutions, we now move to exploring the different issues related to quality in the manufacturing setting that may influence drug shortage. So to present the results of the collaboration study on quality issues in drug shortage in the Asia Pacific, may I introduce our second speaker, Professor Jocelyn Bautista Palakpak is a faculty member at the Department of Industrial Pharmacy, College of Pharmacy, University of the Philippines, Manila. She is also the Assistant Director of the Institute of Herbal Medicine, National Institutes of Health in UP Manila, and the project leader of dosage forms from Philippine medicinal plant constituents of the National Integrated Research Program on Medicinal Plants, or NIRPROM. She obtained her Bachelor of Science and Master of Science in Industrial Pharmacy degrees from the UP Manila, where she also served as a former Dean of the College of Pharmacy. So let's now transfer the screen to the presentation of Dr. Palakpak.
Hello everyone, mabuhay! We are delighted to share with you our study on drug shortage in the Asia-Pacific region. The collaboration study on quality issues in drug shortage in Asia-Pacific. I wish to acknowledge the research team, Ms. Rosario Barangan, Mr. Nico Mejia, Mr. Mark Palpagan, and Ms. Althea Gundran. In behalf of the team, I would like to thank Ms. Vivian Santillan and Ms. Chay Benyosa for their insightful advice in shaping the study. This study is a collaboration between the UP College of Pharmacy and the Federation of Asian Pharmaceutical Associations, or FAPA, with strong support from the International Society for Pharmaceutical Engineering Philippines affiliate, the Philippine Chamber of Pharmaceutical Industries, the Philippine Association of Pharmacists in the Pharmaceutical Industry, and the Young Pharmacists Group Philippines. With this presentation, I have no conflicts of interest to disclose. Our agenda will include the study's background and significance, the scope and methodology, the results, and the conclusions and recommendations. In recent years, drug shortages have become a major obstacle in the delivery of the optimal health outcome for patients. To start off this topic, I would like to show you the first part of a simple video made by a special person on how he perceives the problem of unavailability of a drug product when a patient needs it most. There are studies available in the US and in Europe on the widespread and persistent problem of drug shortage. Several reasons were cited, with manufacturing problems as the leading cause of the drug shortage, accounting for 23% in the US and 16% in Europe. The European Medicines Agency, or EMA, identified globalization of manufacturing and the complex supply chain issues as some of the factors that increase the risk of drug shortages. The 2013 ISBE Drug Shortage Survey identified that manufacturing and quality issues were among the most prevalent causes leading to a drug product shortage, both for sterile and non-sterile drug products. In the aforementioned studies, however, no technical manufacturing root cause for drug shortages was identified. In contrast, there are few studies conducted on drug shortages in the Asia-Pacific region. In a study in Shanxi Province, Western China, respondents believed that too low prices and other issues related to manufacturing, such as good manufacturing practice, or GMP, and materials issue were the causes of shortages of most drugs. In Karachi, Pakistan, the shortage of injectable dosage forms of a drug is more common, and the cited causes were issues in vendor supplies, miscommunication, regulatory issues, inventory mismanagement, and prices. And in Australia, the causes of medicine shortages were described as diverse interacting and connected factors, including regulation, manufacturing, procurement, global acquisitions, financial viability, political instability, and natural disasters. In an attempt to address the growing problem, several governments and agencies have adopted policies, programs, research studies, and guidelines. As early as 2013, the United States Food and Drugs Administration came out with its strategic plan for preventing and mitigating drug shortages. It identified two central goals to address drug shortages, namely improving their mitigation response to imminent or existing shortages, and implementing strategies for the long-term prevention of shortages by focusing on the root causes of shortages. In 2015, the World Health Organization hosted a technical consultation to discuss the bottlenecks and reasons for shortages, consider existing solutions, and identify approaches that could be effective at the global scale. So in the 69th World Health Assembly on the 28th of May 2016, member states were urged to develop strategies that may be used to forecast, avert, or reduce shortages. It also called upon manufacturers, wholesalers, global and regional procurement agencies, and other relevant stakeholders to contribute to global efforts to address the challenges of medicines and vaccines shortages, including thorough participation in notification systems. In Europe, the European Union legislation requires mandatory pre-notification by marketing authorization holders of any disruption in supply in the case of permanent or temporary cessations, and for manufacturers of medicines in the case of any defect that could lead to an abnormal restriction in supply. EMA in 2012 proposed requiring submissions by all MHS of a risk analysis of their manufacturing process, identifying any weaknesses, and depending on the severity, provide a contingency plan and proposals to strengthen the identified weaknesses. So in July 2019, EMA and heads of medicines agencies published a guidance which includes a reporting template for MAHSs to detecting and reporting medicine shortages. The EMA and HMA intended to launch a pilot project on implementing the guidance. However, COVID-19 pandemic happened. The COVID-19 pandemic has exacerbated the incidence of drug shortages, not only of COVID-19 related medicines, including vaccines, but other medications as well. The uncertainty of COVID-19 disease have caused anticipatory purchasing of medications around the world, driving demand to an unprecedented high. Meanwhile, the supply side has been disrupted by production factory closures, shipping delays or shutdowns, and trade limitations or export bans. China, a major source of active pharmaceutical ingredients, finished dosage forms, and other raw materials, grapple with the shutdown of factories in the Hubei and Henan provinces. This is alarming for the U.S., considering as 37 pharmaceutical factories in the Hubei province held drug master files for making APIs for U.S. drug products. While India, one of the largest exporters of finished products that rely on about 70% of its raw materials from China, has restricted the exportation of medications to other parts of the world in order to prevent a potential shortage in its own country. These offshoots of the COVID-19 pandemic would definitely amplify drug shortages in other parts of the world. So despite the work done to date, shortages continue to impact on patient care. The impact may cause patients to receive substitutions by another medicinal product, which may achieve the same desired outcome. But what happens to the patient when there are no therapeutic alternatives? The Asia-Pacific pharmaceutical market is growing rapidly and is soon expected to be the second largest pharmaceutical market in the world. The growth is largely driven by rising awareness of healthcare and accessibility to modernized treatment regimens without border restrictions. While it is recognized that drug shortage has become a global problem and that it is perceived to be exacerbated by the COVID-19 pandemic, currently, as previously mentioned, there are few studies and discussions of drug shortages in the Asia-Pacific region. Understanding the underlying issues and possible causes regarding drug shortages and seeking input from the industry for potential solutions will provide the pharmaceutical industry and regulatory authorities in the Asia-Pacific region the much-needed scientific data to foster discussion and the development of various risk-based approaches to mitigate and prevent drug shortage. Hence, the reason why this study was pursued. So, middle of this year, the University of the Philippines Manila College of Pharmacy, in collaboration with the Federation of Asian Pharmaceutical Associations, conducted an anonymous survey based and reference from the International Society for Pharmaceutical Engineering Drug Shortages Survey in 2013. Since drug shortage is of a complex nature, the survey focused on the supply side of drug shortage, specifically on the manufacturing aspect and quality issues in the Asia-Pacific region. To ensure that quality responses are collected and interpreted, the study employed a quality management tool known as the Quality Function Deployment or QFD, a structured approach for defining requirements and translating control characteristics in the form of a planning matrix. QFD allows people to think together. And in addressing a serious problem such as drug shortage in the region, will require that we put our heads together. The survey was divided into the following sections based on the 2013 ISBE drug shortage study. A general section to identify correlations between the respondents' answers, job title, functional area or scope of responsibilities, product characteristics, and market. Also, the underlying causes of drug shortages, which will need the respondent's company history with drug shortages and or near misses. Third are company strategies to prevent or alleviate drug shortages. The preventative measures, metrics, and organizational processes of the company that help maintain oversight and possibly prevent drug shortages. And the fourth one are the regulatory body's ability to prevent or help avoid drug shortages, which will be the respondent's experience regarding the regulator's ability to help avoid or mitigate a potential drug shortage issue by helping to execute and facilitate actions. Again, the survey hopes to better understand the underlying issues and possible root causes regarding drug shortages. In addition, the study would determine if mandatory submission by all MAHs of a risk analysis of their manufacturing process and providing contingency plans and proposals similar to that required by EMA is acceptable. The research team believes that the data from this anonymous survey will provide the pharmaceutical industry and regulatory authorities in the Asia-Pacific region with scientific data useful to support a call for active discussions that would result in the development of risk-based approaches to mitigate and prevent drug shortages. So the results of this study will be discussed according to the previously mentioned sections, based on the 2013 ISBE drug shortage study. The general section, the underlying causes of drug shortages, company strategies to prevent or alleviate drug shortages, and the regulatory bodies' ability to prevent and help avoid drug shortages. We received 70 responses, 71.4% of which answered as individuals and 28.6% answered on behalf of their respective companies. Of these, 25.7% have more than 20 years of experience in the pharmaceutical industry, and more than 40% of the respondents are holding top management level positions. The majority of respondent company products fall under antibacterials, analgesics, and cardiovascular agents. From the responses, 65 supplied in their local market, 34 in the ASEAN market, 15 in the Middle East, 13 in America, 14 in Europe, and 14 in Australia. %38.6% of the respondent companies have experienced one or more actual drug shortages or near misses. From these responses pertaining to shortages or near misses, 22.2% are sterile products, while 77.8% involve non-sterile products. Out of the responses involving sterile products, 83.3% believe that quality issues are relevant factors in the shortage. For non-sterile products, issues concerning active pharmaceutical ingredients from a third party and quality issues are cited as relevant factors in the shortage. Quality issues, specifically quality systems, include compliance with GMPs and internal procedures and specifications. The Quality Control Unit and all of its review and approval duties, like change control, reprocessing, batch release, annual record review, validation protocols, and reports. In addition to looking at the potential root causes behind drug shortages, the survey also set out to reveal what mitigation strategies companies were putting in place to help prevent drug shortage from occurring. The shortages that majority of the companies have that they believe enable them to quickly detect and address potential drug shortages are as follows: a strong quality system, strong communication with regulatory authorities, company leaders who are committed to working closely with regulatory bodies, metrics and monitoring systems, processes and mechanisms in place to anticipate the potential for drug shortages, ability to quickly react to potential shortages and increase manufacturing capacity. An information technology a system to help identify potential risks that could result in a drug shortage, and the ability to identify an alternate qualified supplier or contract manufacturer. While majority of the companies have dedicated personnel to detect and resolve issues which they believe are important to prevent drug shortages, there are differences in terms of incentivizing to achieve the goal of preventing drug shortages. Additional steps that were identified that companies can take include increased management oversight and greater communication with suppliers, clients, and regulatory agencies. Pardon for the misspelling. In addition, or in general, slow decision making among key persons, lack of cascading information to persons involved, and the insufficient means of cascading information are major factors that influence risk of drug shortages. The action steps that majority of the company have taken to mitigate the negative impact of a drug shortage include advance notice of the shortage to help make sure time is given to find alternative therapeutic to find therapeutic alternatives and quickly identify partners that can help manufacture quantities needed to overcome the shortage. Based on the responses, it was found that overall strategic planning on the supply chain management system and availability of business continuity plans should be in place. Companies must always have back plans since Asian countries have increasing populations and polypharmacy interventions are evident due to existing multiple diseases. Thus, it is expected that increased demand for drug products will be evident. The survey respondents believe that drug regulatory activities are not currently optimal from the perspective of industry professionals involved in preventing or ameliorating drug shortages. It is therefore important to understand that what can be done with respect to the use of metrics to help improve overall quality. The development of redundancy in manufacturing operations, enabling expedited review of regulatory submissions, expediting inspections, exercising enforcement discretion, and working to improve overall communication with the regulatory agency to strengthen the ability to reduce the impact of drug shortages. So in general, the results are congruent with the findings of the 2013 drug shortage survey conducted by the ISBE. Based on the results, respondents believe that the guidelines of EMA on the submission of risk analysis of manufacturing processes and contingency plan is very significant because this will help countries to reduce the risk of low quality of drugs as well as possible drug shortages. However, the majority of the respondents believe that this kind of risk analysis will be challenging for countries which have different regulations and cannot fully comply. The situation will decrease the chances for these countries to get their products approved in other countries, thereby reducing the availability of product alternatives. A majority of the respondents also believe that a risk-based approach to manage drug supply ensures business continuity is the most practical and economical approach to deal with drug shortages. Moreover, respondents also believe that drug shortages are not always attributable to weakness in the manufacturing processes, since there are some cases where drug shortage is a result of business decisions to optimize the use of a manufacturing site. Thus, preventing drug shortages should not only be the MAH's responsibility, but it should be a partnership between the regulatory agencies and industry stakeholders. Quality issues are relevant factors in the shortage identified for both sterile and non-sterile products. Finally, preventing drug shortages should not only be the marketing authorization holder's responsibility, but should be a partnership between the regulatory agencies and industry stakeholders. For our recommendations, technical, quality, and compliance steps that either industry or health authorities should make to further reduce the potential for drug shortages, including vaccines, are the following. Emergency use authorization helps industry and regulators to provide much-needed medicines, especially vaccines. Increase regulatory and industry and supply chain connectivity. Upgrade regulatory personnel technical capability to fast-track evaluation. Implementation of reliance pathway or facilitated registration pathway to help faster access to medicines for both new and established products. Improve communication of FDA to industries to reduce drug shortages. The FDA should prioritize those applications with supply impact to reduce impact to patients. Government should collaborate with industry to build and enhance manufacturing technical capabilities, build local capability and capacity to meet drug, including vaccines, demand, improve productivity and yields, and provide incentives to make local drugs of high quality and affordability. Introduce reliance or expedited pathways to facilitate the registration of alternative sites without the need to apply for a new license. Allow issuance of special import permits to import from other countries. Utilize FDA website to publish list of drug shortages and specify therapeutic alternatives. Invest on equipment, technology, and personnel to promote local manufacturing of drug products, APIs, excipients, and others. The adoption of a notification system, and for FDA to recommend establish equivalence of API available in the market based on use in registered and approved products to reduce development time and to facilitate switching between declared API manufacturers based on availability. So these are the references that we cited in this study. I would now share the complete video made by the special person. So before closing this presentation, let me share with you this witty quote from Jay Leno, the American TV host. There is a nationwide shortage of drugs for attention deficit disorder. The FDA says they're not sure how it happened. I guess somebody wasn't paying attention. With this afternoon's event organized by the PPHA and FAPA, I sure do hope that that somebody won't be any of us, and that we're not too late. With this afternoon's event organized by the PPHA and FAPA, I sure do hope that that somebody isn't any of us, and that we're not yet too late. So thank you for listening and for your time. Mabuhay po tayong lahat.
Thank you, Professor Palakpak, for presenting the different factors related to drug shortage, including the dilemma that regulatory bodies and manufacturing groups face between prioritizing quality and safety versus timeliness and availability. As many countries have experienced during the pandemic early on, people were complaining about how slow the development and approval of medicines and vaccines are. But when emergency use authorizations were released for some products, some are not convinced with how quality is ensured by authorities. And somehow this still leads to a problem of uptake of life-saving medicines and vaccines. I'm sure at this point you have questions right now, so please type them in the Q&A box. Now, for the next presentation, we are fortunate to have with us live today our next speaker from Taiwan, who will be sharing how drug shortage may impact patient care and how Taiwan monitors and mitigates this issue. Let me introduce our third speaker. Dr. Yuli Chang has devoted himself to hospital and clinical pharmacy practice for over 25 years, actively participating and leading in the development and transformation of pharmacy practice by expanding the scope of clinical pharmacy services, intensifying the collaboration with other medical professionals, and setting up service models of clinical pharmacists conducted outpatient clinic services to promote patient safety of medication use as well as the public image of pharmacists. For 10 years now, Dr. Chang has been part of the core organizing and training team of the International Good Pharmacy Practice or GPP training program in Taiwan, which is sponsored by the FAPA Foundation every year. So this training focuses on the promotion of pharmacy practice and safe medication use among Asian countries. Recently, he started joining the overseas expert group of FAPA Foundation that provides on-site assistance for Indonesia to set up national standards on medication management. In 2018, Dr. Chang was recognized for his contributions in hospital pharmacy in the region through the Ishidate Award in Hospital Pharmacy. At present, Dr. Chang serves as the Director of Pharmacy Department of the Taipei Veterans General Hospital, a member of the National Task Force on Drug Shortage in Taiwan, and the Executive Director of the Taiwan Society of Health Systems Pharmacists. And of course, he is also the chairperson of the FAPA Hospital and Clinical Pharmacy section. So welcome, Dr. Chang. I'll transfer the screen to you now.
Thank you, Christine, for your kind introduction. It's a great pleasure and honor to have this opportunity to join this webinar. Thank you for the organizing committee inviting me in this special conference. As I serve as the principal investigator of Taiwan National Drug Shortage Management Project for more than 7 years, I'm willing to share the experience of Taiwan about the critical issue with you. This is the outline of my presentation. I will divide it into 5 main parts to address the shortage issue. In the beginning, I'd like to review the impact and the influence of drug shortages. As you know, there are various reasons for drug shortages. Overall, drug shortages cause can be classified as supply, demand, or regulatory issue, as shown in this chart. The causes of drug shortages are multifactorial. Supply issues mean manufacturers are unwilling or unable to produce enough medicine to satisfy the demand. It can be classified into manufacturing problem, availability of raw material, business reason or economical reasons like low profit margin, low market size, cost raise of raw materials, or a shortage of active pharmaceutical ingredients, excipient or packaging material, and capacity constraints, logistical problem, transportation issues, and drug supply chain management incompetency. The transportation problem is usually due to horrible weather, bad traffic, and natural disasters. I think the audience have already asked the question about the reason of drug shortage. Yeah. So there is a survey conducted by Institute of Medication Safety Practice, ISMP, which indicate the most frequently encountered difficulties for drug shortages. Here I demonstrate the result by the rank of percentage. There are little or no information about the duration of a shortage, lack of advanced warning from manufacturer or FDA, and there is no information about suggested alternatives, or little or no information about the cause of drug shortage, and also substantial resources spent investigating the shortage and developing a plan of action, and also difficulty obtaining a suitable alternative product. They are all the difficulties we may facing in our daily practice. Actually, what is the impact of drug shortage? The drug shortage affects all stakeholders, especially patient and the consumer, in economical, clinical, and humanistic aspect. Clinical outcome of drug shortage have been reported in the majority of studies in developing countries. It included alteration in treatment, inferior treatment, prescription inaccuracies, dispensing errors, administrative errors, delayed or denied treatment, prolonged hospitalization, adverse drug reaction, and even death. For example, if you use afuzolin to replace tamsulosin, that is drug for the benign prostate hyperplasia. But if you use the afuzolin, the patient's QT interval may prolong. It generates new problems. So in terms of the economical impact, drug shortages usually result in an extra cost or budget for different stakeholders, including suppliers, retailers, and the hospitals. For patients, they have to pay from their pocket at all economical levels. From the statistics of a US study, it may cost extra $540 million due to drug shortages. Drug shortages also result in various humanistic impact on patients, and the healthcare professionals notice many types of research. Shortages usually give rise to patient complaint, frustration, anger, dissatisfaction, decreased adherence, and the psychological effect. And the patient may lose trust in the hospital and concern about the alternative effect. It makes physicians dissatisfied, stressed, lose patients' trust. All medical professionals face increased frustration, threat, violence, negative workplace situation. they have to put extra effort and time into managing the shortage. So let me introduce the regulations regarding drug shortages in Taiwan. In terms of regulation regarding drug supply issue, there are four main parts, including time frame for shortage report, the method required for reporting, the penalties for violators, and the action plan from the central health authorities, like Taiwan FDA and the Bureau of National Health Insurance. In the reporting time frame regulation, the regulation is quite similar to US FDA. For essential drugs, suppliers should report to the Central Health Authority, that is Taiwan FDA, 6 months ahead of time in the case of inability to continue to manufacture, import, or insufficient supply of the drug. In the case of unpredictable events, such as natural disasters, suppliers should report to the health authority within 30 days of the incident. For the penalties for failing to report, we have penalties including making public announcement of the name of the firm and the violation detail. In the case of a serious violation or continued violation, may be imposed with a fine. And also, the national insurance may remove the drug from the payment list for 1 year. In Taiwan, the shortage report is required mandatory via online system. Information that should be provided are clearly listed in the regulation, including suppliers' current inventory, estimated time of available supply, reasons for shortage, etc. In the case of essential drug shortages, the authority may publicly solicit pharmaceutical firms' application for special case importation approval. This also allows the firm to apply the import sufficient amount of medication that meet the entire country's need and relieves the administrative burden for each hospital to look for suppliers. The Bureau of National Health Insurance in Taiwan accesses and determines the price of the special imported or manufactured drugs, granting favorable terms and conditions to encourage manufacturers or supplier to join and help to resolve the shortages, such as offer the highest price among reference countries, double the drug price for importation, etc. To encourage a domestic manufacturer, National Health Insurance may provide double product cost. In the following, I'd like to introduce the drug shortage management in Taiwan. The TSHP means Taiwan Society of Health System Pharmacists. Is a professional organization devoted to improve and upgrade the institutional pharmacy practice in Taiwan. In 2011, the Taiwan FDA authorized TSHP to initiate the National Drug Shortage Project, which would serve as the official managing mechanism for drug supply and shortage across Taiwan. From the beginning of the project, we set up a task force which consists of pharmacists from 7 medical centers at different regions of Taiwan. They are pharmacy directors, clinical pharmacists, and the pharmacists who are in charge of drug procurement and supply. There are over 60 professional members involved. From shortage reports, evaluation, information management, and making public announcements. The task force worked collaboratively to establish a multi-dimensional network to further assisted by the government agencies, healthcare institutions, pharmaceutical manufacturers, and the medical societies to manage drug shortages. There are 6 main strategies in our project. We have established a multi-purpose platform with reporting, evaluation, and announcement, and the statistical functions. I will show you more detail later. We also set up emergency liaison network by line to facilitate information communication. We hold task force consensus meeting every other month to discuss the shortage issue. In the regular meeting, we invite the pharmacists involved in the shortage case evaluation to learn from each other and share experiences. Through this process, we can improve the quality of evaluation. We also responsible for set up and update the Taiwan essential drug list. I will talk about later. We have designated personnel to daily monitoring the main website related to drug shortage management in the world, including FDA, ASHP, EMA, and Canada, etc. We hold educational activities regularly to communicate with the stakeholders, to cooperate with the network to deal with the shortage. Let me show you some detail about the drug supply information platform. As you can see here, this is the multifunctional platform, primarily focuses on notifying and reporting drug shortage event, announcing evaluation results, and seeking supplier for drugs in shortage. Let me give you an overview about the process from reporting to public announcement. As we receive a drug shortage report, the system administrator will check if it is duplicated report, then send a questionnaire to the license holder to reply for supply and the inventory status. On day 2, a designated reviewer from the task force will process to review supply status, substitution, impact of the drug shortage event, and make review comment. On day 7, a second reviewer, always they are pharmacy directors or experienced pharmacists, will review and give comments. On day 9, the system administrators checks for the completeness of the report. If it is okay, the report will send to Taiwan FDA. After the review report approved by Taiwan FDA, the abbreviated report will be published on the website of the platform. In the meantime, the TFDA will take action if needed. Let me show you some picture from the platform. This is the homepage of our reporting website. Everybody can report a shortage event via the platform. The reporter is required to fulfill the requirement to make a shortage report. For example, they have to fill the name, date, contact number, current working institute, identity, contact email, source of shortage information, etc. There are some other items have to fill as reporting, including classification of drugs, drug permit number, brand name, generic name, indication, ADC classification, dosage form and strengths, manufacturers, distributor. In the review process, the license holder of the drug is mandatory to fulfill the questionnaire. to facilitate the shortage management. It is a critical step for shortage evaluation. They have to fulfill the availability information and the supply status. They also need to report the effective period, manufacturing capacity, and the status of inventory. In a preliminary assessment, after receiving the result of questionnaire filled by the license holder, the system administrator will assign the case to pharmacists in the task force for further evaluation. We have developed a formatted evaluation table to facilitate the review. The reviewer have to fulfill every column of the evaluation report, including clinical use, reason for shortage, shortage period, consumer per years, available substitution, severity of shortage, and the suggestions in a specific time frame. The task force have summarized the evaluation tips to the reviewer, including information of drug in shortage, information of substitution, impact of the drug shortage event, and also recommendation. All of the items are required to use during the evaluation process. So as you can see here, after the evaluation, the final result will be posted on the platform website. So the information, including the reason for the shortage, and also the manufacturer's name and the specification of the drugs. So as you can see in the right part of the slide, the reason for shortage, shortage status, shortage period, available alternatives, and also clinical recommendations. So as you can see here, the reports are sorted by alternatives and the supply status into 3 classifications. They are current shortage with alternatives, or current shortages without alternative, and resolved shortages. If there is no alternative for essential drugs, a public call for supplier will be performed, and the message will be posted on the website. So if you are the reporter, you can follow the information by using the case number and the email to check the process of the report. And also the report will divide it into several categories. If the report someone have reported, they can see information from the website for duplicated cases. And if the report is not duplicated, and you can refer from the website to see the status of the evaluation. And if there is no shortage, they will show supply status is normal. So let me give you some idea about the essential drug list in Taiwan. Actually, we update once other year because the WHO also updates every other year. So we have already updated to the 3rd version but we will modify the essential drug list from the WHO essential drug list by some treatment guideline or some special drug list from our insurance administration. And some of them have already shortage in Taiwan. And also, we do some risk evaluation for drug shortage. So let's move to the part that how about the management strategy and the drug shortage statistic during the COVID-19 pandemic. This is the statistic of the pandemic in Taiwan. As you can see, the accumulated cases in Taiwan is about 60,000 cases. And as you can see in the right part, we have already around 848 deaths. So during the initial phase of the pandemic, around February 2020, in order to ensure a sustained and stable supply of medication to combat COVID-19, we listed several medications that are related to the treatment, such as antiviral medication, drugs for the treatment of pneumonia, septic shock, respiratory failure, and the drugs used for supportive therapy. And we evaluate the potential risk of shortage for this drug based on the API source, number of active license, total consumption, and the availability of alternatives. In addition, we conducted a national-wide survey on hospital inventory for this drug and the essential infection control resources, such as alcohol-based hand rubs, in the beginning of the pandemic. As expected, the drug shortage reporting cases surged during the pandemic. As you can see, the case number was 20 times more than usual in March. To deal with the increasing reported shortage, we made some improvements for the online drug supply information platform. For example, we recommended the authority to emphasize on the role and the responsibility of suppliers and provide comprehensive and transparent drug supply status and the information to the public. During the COVID-19 pandemic, we conducted a national survey to investigate the impact of COVID-19 on hospital drug inventory management policy. We compared the differences of safety stock, order quantity, and the frequency of ordering per month among medical centers, regional hospital, and the district hospital before and after the pandemic. From the result of the survey, we found there may be hoarding phenomena due to the pandemic. Therefore, we recommend healthcare institutes do not hoard, and suppliers should maintain the stability of supply chain and report any shortage event. Most importantly, the government should take action to deter the hoarding. The authority should be a leader and lay down the ground rules on supply chain management, such as making regulation on early reporting of a shortage and the principle of allocation of medication in the time of shortage. According to our survey and suggestions, to prevent the hospital and the facilities to stockpile medications, the Taiwan FDA issued a temporary regulation on March 16 last year, called Principle of Drug Supply and Management during COVID-19 epidemic. The main point of the principle are that the healthcare facilities or pharmacies should make drug purchase according to the quantity used the same time in the previous year. If purchases or actual clinical need exceed 10% of the quantity, the reasons and the supporting document should be submitted to Taiwan FDA for purchase approval. This regulation helps prevent panic buying and the stockpiling of healthcare facilities and ensure rational distribution of medications. As a hospital pharmacy department, the first and foremost task during the pandemic is to ensure a sustained and stable supply of medication for clinical use. Also, the allocation of resources and the prevention of potential stockpiling behaviors and the well-being of our staffs and the provision of essential pharmacy services are our major concern during this time. I'd like to share a few measures that we took to address this issue during the past few months. First, we conducted a survey on contracted pharmaceutical suppliers to get a hold of their current inventory status and the possibility of shortage in the next 3 to 6 months. If we found a potential shortage, we immediately evaluated and seek alternative, whether it is to find another supplier for the medication or to consider a different drug or therapy as clinical alternatives. In February and March last year, we contacted 150 suppliers and surveyed over 1,200 products and found 40 potential shortage that may occur within 3 months. This proactive survey gives us time to prepare ourselves to deal with a potential shortages. To ensure that all medications are used appropriately, we also implemented some measures to prohibit stockpiling of medication, including infection control supplies. For instance, we put prescribing restriction on those medications that may be used to treat COVID-19, such as hydroxychloroquine, azathioprine, and ivermectin. And we prioritize this agent for inpatient treatment. Measures such as temporarily banning this medication for self-purchases and set limitation on duration of use. All these efforts are to make sure that resources are being used to the right and the most needed way. The protection of well-being of our pharmacy staff is another major concern. The hospital provides our staff with appropriate PPE based on their exposure risk. To prevent potential cluster infection, we put staff rotation on hold, fix them at their current position, and to minimize the contact between multiple services area of each staff. Also, to keep a hospital running, maintaining a functional pharmacy service is crucial. Therefore, identify the most essential pharmacy workflow and perform preemptive personnel cross-training to make sure that all functional core operation can be maintained in case of an understaffed situation. This is the general statistics of the annual shortage cases in Taiwan. As you can see, last year we have the most reported and evaluated cases. In 2020, around 3,000 cases are non-evaluated due to repeated reports. But there are more than 300 cases are truly with supply issue or in shortage. As you can see here, the identification of the reporter this year is shown in this chart. There are 65% from manufacturers, 12% from hospital, and 11% are preemptive reports and pre-evaluation requests from the Taiwan FDA. The analysis about the reason of shortage this year showed that increased demand, manufacturing issue, and drug license change are the main causes of shortage. Other reasons including API shortages, discontinuing manufacturing or GMP issue, etc. If we further analyze the therapeutic class of the shortage cases, we can find drug used for the GI tract and the metabolism, anti-neoplastic and the immunomodulating agent, and the central nervous system drugs are the most reported classes. The last part I will discuss with you about the mitigation strategies and share with you some future perspective from our experience. This chart was cited from a comprehensive review about drug shortages, just published this year. I think it is a good reference to give us an overview about the strategies to mitigate drug shortages. I'm not going into the detail about the paper, but just recommend you can spend some time to read and to analyze if there is any idea can be used to build up your own strategies. So from our experience, having a functional and real-time updated drug supply information platform has been very helpful, especially during this particular time. It brings manufacturers, medication users, and authorities together onto the same page and accelerate the process of addressing a shortage problem. In addition, I think that each stakeholder should take responsibility and do their part to have a good collaboration and minimize the impact of a drug shortage. For example, the authority should be a leader and lay down the ground rules on supply chain management, such as making regulations on early reporting of a shortage and the principle of allocation of medications in the time of shortage. As a member of professional association, we can serve as an unbiased advisor and assist on shortage report evaluations and provide suggestions on clinical alternatives to further help the authorities and other stakeholders to take preemptive action to minimize the impact of a potential shortage. And as a healthcare facility administrator, it is vital to communicate well with prescribing physicians, healthcare professionals, and patients. Having everyone understand the current shortage situation, including the reason, the expected resolving time, and the clinical alternatives. It is crucial to communicate well to avoid tensions and panic during the difficult time. And as pharmaceutical manufacturers and suppliers, the most important role for them is to report early whenever they expect an upcoming shortage, to give time for the authorities, the professional association, and the healthcare facilities to react. Also, one of the obstacles we made during the past few months is that some of the suppliers not willing to disclose or to share information on their inventory status. This brings difficulties on joint strategies to deal with the shortage and may lead to an overall worse outcome. Lastly, our government has long been encouraged domestic pharmaceutical manufacturing. This also gives us more flexibility during this worldwide pandemic and the supply chain disruption. From our experience, I think there are 5 ways to mitigate drug shortage issue. The legislation on demanding the manufacturer to provide true information on their supply status will help to improve the efficiency of evaluation. Government should draw up contingency plan and the reward system to encourage manufacturers to open backup production line to relieve shortages and provide assurance of their selling. Complete transparency on drug manufacturing and set up regulations on rational rationing of drug product to make sure that the drug reasonably distribution to different sectors and to avoid hoarding. And also forming a standing cross-sectoral team to improve the efficiency and the communication when dealing with drug shortage is also helpful. Official information disclosure from government or the National Health Insurance to reveal the information on the consumption or usage of medication can be used to add the assessment process in finding the alternative and the substitution drugs, and to evaluate whether the alternatives meet the clinical demand. So this is my last slide. The increasing frequency of drug shortage actually creates complex challenges for healthcare providers and facilities. Drug shortages have a profound impact on patient safety, clinical outcome, quality control, healthcare facility management, and other important factors. Although it is impossible to predict or prepare for every drug shortage, careful planning can prevent the consequent problem from turning into a crisis. Establishing clear procedures and guidelines for managing drug shortages is essential. Proper information gathering, extensive collaboration, and timely communication strategies are a critical element of an effective drug shortage management plan. Hopefully, experience from Taiwan can give you some new idea or inspiration to you. Thank you all for, and I will express my sincere thanks to the organizing committee to having me to this very good conference. You are welcome to ask a question now or later in the panel discussion. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Chang, for such a detailed presentation, showing us the human aspect of drug shortages, possible control measures at different levels, and clearly illustrating how these interventions were implemented in Taiwan before and during the COVID pandemic. It's indeed a complex issue with no individual one-size-fits-all solution. I'm sure at this point, our participants learned a lot from our speakers. And if you look forward to learning more from other countries and fellow pharmacists, don't forget to join us next year in the FAPA Congress and participate in the different section activities that are still coming in the months ahead. You can follow our FAPA Facebook page to be the first to know about our future events. So at this point, we're going to our question and answer portion. May we request the speakers who are available here or part of the team of the speakers to turn on their cameras. And I'll transfer the stage to Ma'am Rosie to facilitate the Q&A.
Sorry, I'm adding some of the, wait, looking for Vivian. Okay, yes, we have some very interesting speakers, and you know, you got the points of view from the manufacturers and the practitioners. You get the causes of drug shortage from the manufacturers, and also very nice topic on how practitioners can actually help in the mitigation of the drug shortage from Dr. Chang. Vivian is here to answer some questions that were from the presentation of Diane. Professor Joy couldn't connect. She's been trying to connect, so she couldn't connect. But I can answer some of the questions for her because I was also part of the study that was conducted. So first, actually this one is answered by all of the speakers, which is what are the common causes of drug shortage? Because I think we all touched, there's a commonality on the causes of the drug shortage. Vivian, would you like to share with us?
Thank you, Ma'am Rossi, for that question, and good afternoon to everyone and to our panelists and esteemed speakers. Well, as mentioned in Diane's presentation, based on the ISBE Drug Shortage Initiative study, the center or the prominent reason for on the factors contributing to drug shortage is quality issues. But through time, because of the complexity of the supply chain for a manufacturer, your raw material will be coming from one location, your API could be on another location, then you are producing your finished product in a specific location as well. So in different parts of the world. And that can also attribute to the drug shortage. And there are several factors that was identified. Another factor could be large-scale events like this pandemic. Who would have thought that we will be having COVID, right? And when we were doing the study for ISBE, which was initiated in 2013, 2014, that was not really considered. What we just considered are natural events like hurricane, earthquakes, and such scenarios. Another factor could be regulatory challenges. And I guess this is very relatable, especially in the Philippines and even in Asia Pacific, because each country in Asia has a country-specific requirements, and that in itself is special for multinational to adapt to each of these country-specific requirements. So regulatory challenges is also one of those contributing factor. And of course, there's market withdrawals or recalls and other factors. So we cannot really, like, as of now, pinpoint one or two, but as mentioned, quality issues and the complexity of supply chain are the prominent ones. Thank you, Ma'am Rossi.
Yes, I think Dr. Chang grouped them into three groups, like manufacturing, then you have the regulatory issues, and then I think was the third one, the demand, Dr. Chang. Because under manufacturing, you already have the quality issues, the APIs, the logistics. That's you group it that way, correct, Dr. Chang? Yes.
Pardon for I not catch your point. Sorry.
You group the causes for drug shortage into three, right? You group them under manufacturing, and then you have the regulatory, and then you have the demand. So you basically have these three groups separately as the causes for drug shortage.
Oh yeah, so for the supplier or manufacturer, they are responsible to provide the information as early as possible. Although they have their quality issue, but if they know they have maybe some potential to short of supply in maybe actually the manufacturer have they have a manufacturing plan, so they always know before the authority, before the healthcare facilities. So if they can reveal or disclose their information about their manufacturer, that is very important. In our experience, some of the drug companies, they even they have already have shortage, but they are not reluctant to, release the true information. So that's the big question, and we are not allowed this kind of situation. Sometimes when we doing the assessment, the designated reviewer make a call to the manufacturer. They give the false information or give the wrong information to the reviewer, and the authority, if the authority to ask their status of inventory, they always have different answer. So that's why we use we use the chart. They are mandatory to fulfill the chart for the drug in shortage. So they need to reply in the system. So they cannot give the wrong information because we have already record. So that's a good way to avoid this kinds of false information. Yeah.
Yes, interesting you said that, Dr. Chang, because in your case, it's mandatory that manufacturers have to report, and there are penalties for it, correct? Are this report being published publicly, or is it, there's no, because companies might be hesitant to report because of some issues of secrecy or business issues. So
Yeah.
are the reports from the MAH publicly reported?
You mean the actually we have to keep the privacy for the for the manufacturer, because we have no right to release the information about the shortage ahead. So we are responsible. The reviewer, the reviewer of the task force, they are responsible to keep the privacy for the manufacturer. But sometimes because every hospital, they have some, if they when they put the order, they made some obstacle or something wrong, they will sense there will be something in shortage in the future. So I think maybe we always can detect the information in advance. Yeah.
The one reported by the health practitioners, that one in the website, that one is public.
Pardon me?
So the one that's reported in the website, that one is public. The one reported by the health practitioners.
Actually, the information published in our website is in public. Everybody can see. So some information will be published, and some information will keep on the system. Not all the detail published to the public. So the published information is abbreviated information, not all the detail to the public. Yeah.
Yes, because there's a fear that if there's a information that some products have shortages, the prices might increase. There might be problems in the prices.
Yeah, so we only put essential message to the public or healthcare professionals. So if they more detailed information about the inventory of the manufacturer, we don't put that to the public. Yeah.
Then another question is, actually you said that the your FDA authorized the TSHP.
Yeah.
Develop the system, correct?
Yeah.
Who initiated it? Was it the FDA who asked, or it was the TSHP who said the FDA that they will? Because it's very interesting. That system is very interesting and could be helpful for a lot of countries in Asia, because you now have the collaboration of the FDA with health practitioners, correct? So who really initiated it?
Oh, actually, it's initiated by the government, because the government have not have, they have no so many healthcare professionals. I mean the pharmacists, because the pharmacist can do the review work. They are experienced pharmacists, because they have to know the special disease, how what is the alternative. It's always very is need a professional background to do the review. So there is not so many manpower for the government. So they like a project, they give grant, and TSHP, they cooperate with the government. Yeah, so because the Taiwan Society of Health System Pharmacists, because we are composed of different medical centers. So in this project, we have seven medical center directors, and they are clinical pharmacists. We work together to do the review work, because it's a lot of workload for the review. Yeah.
So for the MAH, it's required, no? It's mandatory that they have to submit within a certain number of days. But for the hospitals and the other health professionals, it's not required. There's no limit for the number of days report.
You mean the hospital are required for what? For disclose
it's not mandatory for them to report the hospitals or
oh,
the
yeah.
professionals.
Oh, because actually this is the open system. Everybody can report a shortage in the system. So if we found a shortage, because sometimes there are rare disease, maybe only managed by our hospital. So the drug only used in the medical center, in the the big medical center. So sometimes we will report a shortage to the system. So everybody can report it. Maybe you are a community pharmacist, you also can report a shortage to the system. And when we receive the report, we will evaluate, doing evaluation to see if it is a true shortage. Because sometimes the community pharmacists, when drug in shortage, we are big hospital. We have contract with the supplier, so they always, keep drug to us. But the community pharmacy, because they maybe they don't have contract with the supplier, so they will keep the drug to us. So sometimes the community pharmacists will in shortage before the hospital. Yeah, maybe the situation is the same in Philippines. I don't know.
Yes. I agree. Because sometimes we feel that it's the burden of the reporting and the giving of information is too much on the manufacturer. Sometimes it's because like for us manufacturer, we're just, especially for generic products, we may just be one of the manufacturers. We don't know what the other manufacturers have. So it sometimes you can see that in the retail already, in the hospitals, that there's drug shortage. So that's why it's very interesting that in your case you also give importance to the reporting by the practitioners, the one in the retail, in the hospitals. Yeah. My last question, we just have enough time for one question. My last question for both speakers, because in Asia Pacific, especially if we have small countries, small islands, most are importing and not really manufacturers. So you can imagine the difficulty of the supply chain for our smaller countries like Taiwan. I'm sure some of your drugs are imported also. So how do you mitigate the shortages of these products that you import and not manufactured locally? Or is it difficult? Because you know, it's the problem of like the Philippines. Most, if not, I don't know how many percent of the products are imported. All our
Yes.
APIs are imported, so you can even some of the packaging materials are imported. You can imagine the problem of supply chain. So
Yeah, I guess
especially now it's regional. You know, with the globalization, everything's regional. So
I think it was also covered in Diane's presentation earlier, where she presented the common nodes and complexity in the supply chain, where you have, of course, from the manufacturer side. On the manufacturer side, you have your raw materials, your API, which could be a contributing factor to the drug shortage. But as mentioned by Dr. Yu Lee earlier, this is a multi-stakeholders initiative. It should be discussed by everyone that is a part of this ecosystem. So it's not just the manufacturers, it's also the distributor. As mentioned by Ma'am Rossi, Philippines, most of, I think 70 or 80% of our drug supplies are imported. And this is where the distributors comes in to be part of this discussion as well as the wholesalers, and of course the hospitals, the pharmacists. And the bottom line here is to make our drugs, our products available to the patient, especially if it's needed. And another factor is to have that priority, right? What are the essential medicines? Because we cannot put everything in as a priority, and having everyone part of this discussion to mitigate risk, to identify the risk, and to establish best practices from the manufacturer side to the distribution to the wholesalers to the hospitals to the community pharmacists. Then it's a collaborative effort. I think we cannot have like as mentioned by Ms. Christine, no one fit solution to the drug shortage problem.
so I think with that we can go on. Thank you very much, Dr. Julie and
Thank you.
Vivian. So we'll go next to
Thank you,
the
ma'am.
discussion. Maybe we
Thank
can
you.
have more interesting insights and comment from the panelists. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ma'am Rosie, and our speakers. To help us read the citations and the certificates, may I call on Ma'am Yoli Robles.
Good afternoon, everyone, and happy to be part of this very interesting webinar on drug shortage. I'm very thankful to our distinguished speakers for giving a really informative discussion on the issue of drug shortage. And for this, on behalf of FAPA, and in collaboration with the Philippine Pharmacists Association and the International Society for Pharmaceutical Engineering Philippines, we present the Certificate of Appreciation to Ms. Diane Husted for sharing her expertise as a speaker in the FAPA webinar titled Addressing Drug Shortage Amid the Pandemic, held via Zoom webinar on the 26th day of November 2021, and then signed, sorry, I can't read because of the active chat.
Signed by you. Signed by you,
Signed by
Yoli.
myself. Okay, signed by yours truly. So I can see that part.
So,
And also,
Vivian will be the one to get it in behalf of Diane.
thank you, Vivian, and for representing Diane and for answering the questions during the question and answer. And similarly, same certificate is also provided, the Certificate of Appreciation to Professor Jocelyn Bautista Palakpak for sharing her expertise as a speaker in the FAPA webinar titled Addressing Shortage Amidst the Pandemic, and signed by yours truly. And the last, but
I
not
will
the
get
least,
I will get this on behalf of Joy Lakpak. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Rosie. And the last but not the least, we are presenting this certificate of appreciation to Dr. Yuli Chang for sharing his expertise as a speaker in the FAPA webinar titled Addressing Drug Shortage Amid the Pandemic, given this day, 26th day of November 2021, and signed by yours truly. So thank you, Dr. Yuli Chang. Maybe later I could give some comments on the topics discussed by our speakers, as I find it very informative. And I think from what they have shared with us, it will really be truly, we got some ideas that can be feasible in the Philippines as well as in other Asian countries. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ma'am Yoli. So we are not yet finished. May we now call on for our next part, our next moderator, the member of the PPHA Pharmacy Research Section. May we call on Ma'am Tess Montejo to introduce the list of panelists as well as our panel discussion moderator.
Thank you, Ms. Chai. Good afternoon, everyone. We have a very powerful lineup of panelists. Our first panelist is Dr. Yolanda Robles, the President of the Federation of Asian Pharmaceutical Associations, or FAPA. Next panelist is Dr. Ana Melissa S. Guerrero. She is the Division Chief of the Pharmaceutical Division of the Department of Health in the Philippines. Next panelist is Ms. Vivienne Santillan, the Vice President of the International Society for Pharmaceutical Engineering, or ISBE, Philippines affiliate. And last but not the least, we have Ms. Rosalyn Pangan, Pharmacy Practice Section Representative of Philippine Pharmacists Association. This panel discussion will be moderated by our very own Ms. Maria Rosario Bautista Barangan, or Ms. Rosie, Chairperson of the FAPA Industrial Pharmacy and Marketing Section. Back to you, Ms. Rosie.
Yes, maybe start with Dr. Dolly.
Okay, good afternoon.
So she can give some of her comments or reactions to the presentation.
Thank you very much, Rosie, and thank you to the organizing committee of this very important webinar on the issue of drug shortage. Well, for everyone to know, FAPA has a new vision started in the first quarter of 2020, wherein we look at our role in the region to help ensure access to safe, cost-effective, and quality pharmaceutical services and products. So it's not all about products, but it's also services to improve the health outcomes for all. And actually, we wanted to really champion access to medication for all as part of the move towards universal health coverage. And I know that FAPA, for its part, has its pool of pharmaceutical experts from all areas of practice in about 24 country members and country member organizations. And we hope that the problem of drug shortage could also be answered, and we can learn from the best practices as presented by Dr. Yuli Chan as something where all other countries could learn from. And also FAPA, being responsible in its role in the region, would like to set up activities such as this webinar to provide venue for discussion, and not really just for the purpose of discussion, but really to be able to address the important issues. And as of now, we have the issue on drug shortage. I could see that our three speakers had looked at different aspects, but there are commonality in what they have shared to us this afternoon. From what Diane Husted had told us and had shared with us, she discussed the factors contributing to drug shortage. And I could see that she emphasized on the characteristic of unpredictability. And that I think causes also, it is also part of the problem. And also, in addition to being unpredictable, there are many contributing factors throughout the supply chain. I think she highlighted the issue of complexity. And that's why I think that we have to know that for each country in Asia, there will always be a different characteristics. Philippines in itself is complex. And I would say that for all other countries, there would be a different setup on how they have their pharmaceutical system. Now, with regards to the tools and practices in order to mitigate, no, and to reduce the problem of drug shortage, I think she emphasized for the need for transparent communication between the industry and the health authorities. But I think in addition to the industry, the pharmaceutical industry and the health authority, we need a lot of input coming also from the health facilities, including the health professionals, because they are the frontliners. They see the need on the ground, and especially if we take a look at the pandemic, much of the information that we gather with regards to drug shortage are coming from hospitals, from community, and even from patients themselves. So that I think is an important component of how we look at communication. So health authority, the pharmaceutical industry, and the health sector, which are the ones utilizing the medicines. And I would say that there are relevant information that she mentioned about redundancy and stockpiling. I think even with the lecture, or rather the presentation of Dr. Yuli Chan, stockpiling has not been recommended as the first line intervention when it comes to drug shortage. In fact, one might say that it is also part of the problem, isn't it? Which is what we're trying to solve. And this, we know that hoarding and trying to have most of the in-demand medicine is not helpful if we take a look at the general needs of the population. So I think we should not think only of ourselves, let's say one institution, one hospital, but we have to think of the needs of the patients in general, so that there will be those who will not be deprived of their medication. Now, with regards to the one that was given by my colleague, Professor Joy Palakpak, I think there is important discussion on the baseline information that we have to set. But the study or the survey was focused on the quality of medicines. I mean, the quality as a component of the drug shortage issue. And I think with what she had given, it had provided us an idea of what it is in Asia Pacific. Actually, one problem we have is that much of the work, much of the data that we know about drug shortage are emanating from Europe and the US or the North America. So it is high time for us to really put up, and try to build the database with regards to drug shortage in Asia, because we in comparison with Europe and with North America, more or less there are homogeneity in terms of their health system. I mean, not really, I would say equivalent, but that in their case, there are more similarities than differences as compared with us in Asian countries, where perhaps the differences are more glaring. And that's the reason why I think very important to really establish databases. And the research that was done by FAPA Industrial Pharmacy Section together with PPHA, with the UP College of Pharmacy and ISBE would be a step towards that. And it would be good if we could see each country having also more detailed information on that, okay? And the last, this is the last, and I think I have so many things to say about the work of Dr. Yuli Chang, because yeah, it's quite systematic. But let me just end up my my comments in a simple way, wherein I really see the responsibilities of all stakeholders in the pharmaceutical system, the government authority. And I would highlight also the role of the professional organizations. I think it is high time for us to be proactive when it comes to being involved in major drug issues involving the nation. Okay, and last, the health facilities and the pharmaceutical manufacturers. So yeah, this is a very fruitful afternoon. Thank you very much for the opportunity to also share my
Thank you,
comment.
Yoli. I agree with you 100% with everything that you said. Thank
Thank
you.
you.
So now we'll have Dr. Guerrero. Oh, wait, I think here, yes.
Good,
Okay, go ahead,
good
Dr.
evening to
Guerrero.
everyone. So my apologies if my internet is fluctuating. So I lost the audio quite a while ago. So I prepared a statement to make sure that I stay with a 5-minute time that was allotted to me. But once again, thank you for this invitation to the Department of Health to share with you our country. Complex the lockdowns, of course, we imposed lockdowns across the countries. And also that resulted in scaled down manufacturing. And also the logistical operations were affected by the lockdowns. And there were also bans and export bans and restrictions in the importation and export of active pharmaceutical ingredients and finished products, which affected also our supply in the country. And of course, Philippines is very vulnerable with regard to drug shortages because we are a market that is highly import dependent. Okay, so we source our products, not only just the finished products from other countries, but also the APIs, the excipients, the packaging materials from countries like China, France, India, and other countries. So that when the pandemic happened, so it really disrupted our supply and the operations. In fact, even before the pandemic, we had several drug shortages reported to the Department of Health. I remember that a lot of hospitals were, from time to time, reporting to the Department of Health some supply shortages. And these are caused by many factors. So they may be caused by quality or failures in the quality control. So that happened with the supply of rabies vaccine in the past, and also the supply of a cancer drug like methotrexate. There were also reports of the lack of APIs. So I think that happened in our supply of potassium chloride, which is needed for kidney patients. And there are also sometimes regulatory challenges, like the manufacturers know this. And when you change your manufacturing site or you change your packaging, of course, you will have to secure approvals from the FDA, and that also affects the steady supply of your products. And we also recently commissioned a survey or a study, which also revealed some factors that impact on the supply chain. So that includes for the public sector, of course, we all know the regulatory hurdles at the FDA, but they're doing something about it. I hope that our FDA is here to participate during the discussion. We also have problems on financing, especially here in the Philippines, where we have inadequate financing. Of course, that affects the ability of hospitals and health facilities to source the medicines. And of course, the recurring inefficiencies in the procurement and distribution systems, and also the problem in planning. So we have inadequate planning and forecasting, among many others. So during the COVID-19 pandemic, we learned a lot and we continue to learn because we had agile practices we adopted and we're still doing it with other government authorities and stakeholders. So we're not just working with other government agencies, but private stakeholders. And this started in March 2020. So as soon as the pandemic happened, we mobilized a technical working group. So this is a technical working group to assure the security of supplies. So that includes drugs and also medical devices that we need for the COVID-19 response. And this
Dr. Guerrero's internet is not doing well.
we have to turn on my video in order to continue my statement. Can you hear me very well?
Yes, you turn
Yes,
off your
go ahead.
video better.
Yeah, so I think this works better. So I'm just sharing with you what the efforts that we're doing with the other government agencies. As I said, at the time of the pandemic, we immediately mobilized a technical working group. So that is a technical working group composed of the Department of Trade and Industry, the Bureau of Customs, the FDA, and also our friends from the Department of Finance. So we have fiscal incentives to promote also the local supply, importation of products, especially if they're critical in our response. We also have collaborative supply planning with our hospitals. We monitor the inventory of our hospitals. And also during this pandemic, there was this significant private sector initiative to report to us their inventory every quarter. So we know impending drug shortages and they would notify us of, for example, we know that tocilizumab supply will run short. And this is a global issue that we can't really address just by increasing production because sources of APIs. We know, however, that these actions are only short-term solutions. So we are working on long-term strategies that are also needed so that we are able to respond in an agile manner to future potential shortages of health products. So in the future, so the DOH will work with our partners and stakeholders. So that includes not just the government agencies, but the industry, our patients and hospitals to achieve the following. First is we want to have a multi-sector national drug security program towards a country's self-reliance in producing vaccines, medicines, and other medical supplies to address our country needs. Second, with the FDA, we want to continue the agile regulatory processes. You know what's happening. So the EUAs are being issued and they issue that within 20 days. And that could happen really when the products are critically needed by the country. But of course, not compromising the quality. And this is to ensure that we have a continuous supply of life-saving products, particularly during health emergency. Third is we want to build the capacity of our local government units on supply chain management because they will assume a bigger role on the financing and purchasing of health products under the universal healthcare agenda. Fourth is to foster stronger public-private collaboration with institutions, relevant sectors, perhaps the PPHA and the Pharmacists Association, to help us bolster our national efforts to mitigate drug shortage efficiency. And welcome comments and questions coming from the audience.
Yeah. Thank you very much, ma'am. I'm sure it's actually a great information or welcome that you are here, you are there in DOH. So there's hope. While we continue to hope that we can work together to mitigate the shortage.
Yes, ma'am, we have been working with PPHA also and the pharmacies in the hospitals to monitor their inventory.
Thank you very much, ma'am. So for now, let's ask Vivienne. Can you turn on your?
Thank you, Ma'am Rossi, and thank you also, Dr. Guerrero, for that insightful on the report on what DOH is currently doing with regards to the drug shortage initiative. Well, for my part, I would just like to highlight the International Society for Pharmaceutical Engineering, or ISBE's drug shortages tools that was mentioned in the presentation of Diane. This was developed as part of a cross-industry association initiative in response in 2013 to a request from the European Medicines Agency, or EMA, to present proposals addressing the prevention of drug shortages caused by manufacturing and quality issues. And similar to how FAPA and PPHA's action, ISBE conducted a survey as its starting point in 2013. Concurrently, during that time, discussions with representatives from other regulatory agencies demonstrated the need to move the discussion from a survey to establishing or implementation of best practices in this space. The ISBE drug shortage tools were compiled and developed in hope that it will find use in the industry and be a valuable guide for solving drug shortage problems and preventing the interruption of supplies. These tools may help the industry look holistically across all elements of their company and evaluate on their drug shortage prevention strategies, including policies and procedures, to meet current challenges. From the 6-dimension framework, such as the corporate quality culture, the robust quality system, quality metrics, business continuity planning, communication with health authorities, and building capacity, which is also what was identified in the FAPA and the PPHA survey. ISBE recognizes that there are many other factors that may impact the supply of drugs, including regional economic factors, different regulatory requirements, insurance programs, and government procurement procedures, which are outside the scope of the drug shortage prevention plan, which was built by ISBE. But with regard to the different regulatory requirements among the various regulatory authorities, ISBE recognizes that these differences may warrant region-specific actions. There is no one-size-fits-all solution, but ISBE hopes that by providing a baseline for discussion, we will be able to identify and create opportunities for a more adaptable implementation in the region and especially in the Philippines. ISBE is thankful for the opportunity to collaborate with FAPA and PPHA in this endeavor. ISBE, as a not-for-profit global organization with both industry and regulatory members, we are uniquely positioned to facilitate communication between the different sectors of the pharmaceutical industry and health authorities as it seeks to understand and address this complex problem. With the focus of the ISBE drug shortage team on health authority communication and business continuity planning, there are specific areas that we can explore on these dimensions. And as presented, there are several areas and opportunities for discussion
on how ISPE may best assist. So we are looking forward to having this discussion with the regulatory agencies and the industry members. So again, thank you to PPHA and to FAPA for this opportunity for ISPE to present our initiative in the drug shortage problem. Thank you, Ma'am Rosie.
Thank you, Vivian. Yes, and last but not the least, we have Yan. Are you opening your video, please?
Yeah, can you hear me? Yeah. Hi. Mhm. Thank
Wait,
you,
wait,
Miss
wait.
Rosie.
Yeah.
Mhm. Thank you, Miss Rosie.
Thank
Again,
you.
good afternoon to everyone. Thank you for giving me a chance to sit virtually with this distinguished panel of speakers and reactors. As a supply chain practitioner and also a hospital pharmacist, one of the critical roles of the pharmacist in the hospital setting is assuring the availability of essential medications in our institution. It begins with understanding the rationalization of the mix of medications that will be approved for inclusion in the hospital formulary by working with the medical team in determining which are relevant to clinical practice guidelines, and after which the need to qualify vendors who would be able to meet and serve our requirements based on our inventory analysis vis-a-vis our patient mix census. Aside from computing these requirements, we also need to consider our resources. We need to understand our capacity to spend and allocate our budget. How much money can we spend? How much volume can we take in given our limited space allocation? And likewise, we also need to consider human resources. If we consider frequent deliveries is part of our plan to bring in those medications, given the limited spaces or the capacity of the vendors to produce, we also need to have to consider dedicated staff to constantly monitor the movement of these medications from temperature and humidity levels, also monitoring that on proper storage, placing the orders, following through the orders, placing the orders, in fact, and receiving deliveries. Moreover, coordinating reverse logistics in case of rejects, recalls, and returns because it's part of the whole medication supply chain. And these activities are already heavy given the many hats hospital pharmacists don in the day-to-day hospital operations. And one drug shortage will definitely shake the whole medication management system. And the recent pandemic highlighted the supply chain disruption, and this caused exhaustion in many hospital pharmacy leaders until today. And even before, we have been experiencing drug shortages. This has been highlighted by Dr. Guerrero. Some are affected by shortage of the active pharmaceutical ingredient, leading to the shortage of a drug product. And every day we are faced with the question that can I still serve the needs of the hospital and of course our patients? The COVID-19 pandemic caused 5S disruptions. I always look at as 5S. First, there's sickness. So there's workers are getting sick and quarantine, stopping the production, stopping the operations. So mag-end up again, we have shortage of the medication. Second, we have silos. Countries started, it was highlighted earlier in the presentation, countries started responding to the pandemic by closing their borders to prevent the spread of infection. And this limited again our access to medication. And this led to the third S, which is the slow flow of people, trade, and capital. And there's a bias towards self-reliance. And as these three S's become eminent, we began experiencing shortage, the fourth S. We saw panic buying, increasing demand, limited sources, stockpiling which aggravated the stockout situation of essential medicines and supplies. All of which led to the fifth S, which is the stress that we are experiencing right now. With these disruptions in the pharmaceutical supply chain, really we can see that pharmacists have a pivotal role to sustain the pharmaceutical supply chain. The challenge that we face in our country, and this has been recognized as highlighted by Dr. Guerrero in her presentation, that not all in our country have privilege to access to a computerized system to expedite inventory data analysis. They tried pulling in data so that we could analyze. This expedited this allows us data-driven decision making as a whole, and information on potential drug shortage is still siloed. Sometimes there are more often than not there are instances on information on potential shortage reaches us only when we start to experience delays in the delivery of the medications. Worst of all, the supplier will inform us that they can no longer deliver the medication. Supplies are affected by the various lockdowns and the stockpiling decisions of source countries. And even in our country, most of us responded by doing stockpiling. And we are divided into three major islands. And we know that sometimes it rests, the medications are heavily in Luzon. There's nothing in Visayas and in Mindanao, and also in the remote areas in our country. Plus, another factor in this pandemic is that the pattern of drug utilization is also distorted, given the frequent changes in the protocols in managing the novel disease, the COVID-19. So the pharmacist is challenged to need to scan the market and search for qualified vendors. This means expediting vendor qualification, shortening the process. But of course, we should be also cautioned by not compromising the assurance of integrity and quality. This was also highlighted in the presentation of Dr. Palakpak in the survey, that quality is also an issue that we need to address. And the more difficult path is having to import the medication. And of course, there is still a need to process approval from our Food and Drug Administration. There is a need to be agile, responsive, and still vigilant. Pharmacists also need to start discussing with clinicians to work on alternative treatment options. If we don't have any drug at all, we need to look at other armamentarium and to really go back to the drawing board and try to identify what we can do with the limited resources, especially if the gold standard treatment is no longer available. However, our individual efforts in different institutions in responding to this stockout situation is not enough. A siloed approach will always lead us to the pitfall of stockpiling, ending up with overages, obsolescence, and wasting medications, including time and effort. This will aggravate the current inequitable access to healthcare that we have been trying to address over the past years. A consolidated effort through government leadership is crucial. In the presentations of our three wonderful speakers, the important lesson that we have learned is communication. The national government has a vital role acting out as the channel of communication for potential drug shortages. And aside from identifying drug shortages, current data on current distribution of the remaining inventory of the critical levels that would enable us to have equitable access across the country, and careful allocation planning will be implemented. The third communication pathway is working with the clinical experts in determining the possible alternative treatment options. And closing that loop of communication is going back and reviewing the strategies that we have implemented in response to drug shortage to enable us to work back and think of a new solution, and come up with data-driven solutions and data-driven decisions. And lastly, I'd like to make an appeal kasi we are at the front line in the hospital setting. We are the ones who's going to discuss with the patient, discuss with the doctors that we cannot just say there's no drug. We need to give options as well. And we hope that given the different lockdowns, there's a need for us to open our eyes as a country that perhaps we can look into developing our capacity to manufacture for drug research development, so to ensure our self-reliance and not just increasing the armamentarium of medications, but allow us to be sustainable and not be dependent on other countries to bring in the medications that we need. And I hope this will be our 2020 vision for this, because it was in the pandemic. So I'd like to take this opportunity because we have the people at the back end in the manufacturing industry and the appeal to support our country. That's it. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much for that, Yang. Actually, you talked of stockpiling, which is a real big issue, and also of bringing in or manufacturing locally some of the essential medicine. So that's very interesting, and I'm sure everybody wants that. So let's bring in all the other panelists. Can you turn on the video? And si Dr. Meme, Dr. Guerrero, is your internet? There are lots of questions on your presentation. Maybe we can just give Dr. Meme some of the questions and make a separate webinar for her.
Maybe we should have a separate webinar just on drug security efforts in the Philippines.
Yes, yes. Because actually, this webinar is actually we want just to start it. You know, that everybody's involved, all the stakeholders are here. So this is a start. We hope that we'll have more of this discussion and more of actual implementation. You know, we already have enough data, studies, surveys. We need more of I think, the implementation. You agree, Yoli?
Yes, I do agree because even by just learning from one country's experience, we could see how they manage their drug shortage such that it is predictable and that when it happens, there's already the available intervention to address the issue.
Dr. Meme, do you have?
Yes, I agree. So if we can have another webinar, because there are interventions being done by the government. So it's not just the DOH alone. It's all of the IATF agencies actually involved now in the drug security issue. And we realize that we have to invest in our own local industry so that we will not be caught flat-footed again during the time of the pandemic. So nahuhuli tayo when it comes to vaccine supplies. We have to wait for our supply. So we don't want to be in the same situation when another pandemic happens.
Exactly, because some countries now are really realizing that they cannot just outsource everything. You know, they have to have some local supply, especially of the essential products like the essential medicines. Because otherwise you'll be dependent on the supply of other countries who can just stop supplying you because of their own needs. Like what happened now in like India and all the other countries who are stop exporting. That's why we should develop. Yeah, we talked about the stockpiling. Was there all I have this idea why there's no initiative for hospitals to be more transparent so that they can exchange supplies. Is there such initiative? You know, because some supplies, like as you mentioned, some are in Mindanao, some are most of the supplies are in Mindanao, and some of the needs are in maybe Luzon. Is there no
Let's
exchange of information like that?
I would appreciate exchange of information. However, again, pricing is a factor kasi. So
Yeah.
we negotiate based on our volume. And we also recognize that even the prices of the supplies or medicines is different from a government institution and a private institution. That's another topic. So again, it's volume driven kasi yung pricing sa atin. So something that we need to take up as nationally. So I think it's something that's being studied by the Department of Health. That's why the challenge right now is I'd like to appeal with DOH or the IATF. I know they're doing this initiative to pull the data of hospitals. The problem is we're already exhausted on doing the vaccinations because we have been identified as vaccination centers. And then we're going to do a report every day, every week. And then we do not appreciate what's going on with those data. So we don't know what's going on with the data and are we going to be downloaded. In terms of stockpiling, we can experience that with the vaccination itself. A lot of private institutions bought their own vaccines. And now they're donating it to the hospitals to distribute it because there's already excess and these medications are already expiring. That's the problem. So I think really it's a work in progress. I can appreciate the efforts of the government. It's just that really we really have a lot of things to address like technology or
Yeah.
Wi-Fi systems. It's hard. Everything is manually documented by hospitals.
Agree. Yes, I think that's also one we have to talk with DOH and maybe have their assistance on that. Because actually, Dr. Guerrero, you mentioned actually there's a notification system with FDA, correct? Like actually, with some of us would notify or email FDA. There's no template or there's no template or notification system. It's more of like email to notify them. But actually, at the end, we don't know what happened to that email. Who actually acted on it? It's just like we're emailing back into blank space. So I think there should be more of an interactive system, you know, on how when they report, there should be some communication, intercommunication between the different stakeholders.
Yes, I hope that I am accompanied by my colleagues from the FDA. There is such a drug shortage notification system. So they started it in February 2020, and before the pandemic happened, they already had 300 notifications. But again, you are correct. So there's no feedback mechanism, and I think that is where we can do better as a government. So what happens with the data that you give us? What action should then be required from the players, not only from the government, but also from those who report to the FDA.
Yes, with that, as much as I'd like to continue our discussion, we have another webinar, totally new webinar for this. Because of the time, I would like to end this panel discussion. Thank you very much, for everyone. We'll give the certificates.
Thank you, Ma'am Rosie.
Yes,
So,
can you read?
Yeah, thank you. So on behalf of FAPA, in collaboration with PPHA and ISBE, we present the Certificate of Appreciation to the following panelists for sharing their expertise in the FAPA webinar addressing drug shortage amid the pandemic, signed by Dr. Yolanda Robles. The first panelist, Dr. Yolanda Robles. Thank you, ma'am. The second, Dr. Ana Melissa Guerrero. Thank you. Ms. Vivian Santillan from ISBE. Thank you. And of course, Ms. Rosaline Pangan. Thank you very much, ma'am. So I'll turn over the screen to Ma'am Tess Montejo for the synthesis.
Hi, good evening. Kala ko wala ng oras, di ba? So this afternoon has been all those are very helpful, especially for us pharmacists. Thank you, FAPA, ISPE, and syempre PPHA. Drug shortage has been a challenge and will always be a challenge at all levels, from the supply of materials, manufacturers, distributors, patients, and consumers, not only here in the Philippines, but also internationally. Sabi nga ni Ms. Dayan, there's a lot to do and more to consider. It was mentioned by all three speakers and panelists that there are different factors and causes of the shortage. But very significant mentioned are those manufacturing quality issues, demand and supply issues, regulatory and healthcare concerns, and all these impact patient care. But there has been evolution of ideas. Sabi nga, since 2021, we have been talking on how to mitigate drug shortages. But it's nice to know, according to Ms. Dayan, that a lot of progress has been made. It's really just that things are not easy. According also to Ms. Dayan, communication with health authorities and business continuity plans are very important to prevent shortage. Communication should be consistent and aligned so as not to confuse consumers. For the business continuity plan and all other future prevention actions, we need to establish product priority up to the implementation and execution of response plans. There should be continuous monitoring and refresh communication, and all these should use risk-based approach. Best practices should be implemented to prevent disruption of supply, and these best practices should include best practices on policies and culture. And then on Dr. Chang's presentation, it's a very good guide, especially for hospital and community pharmacies, on regulations and reporting of drug shortages, including penalties. For future actions, roles of each, like government authorities, professional associations, healthcare facilities and pharmaceutical manufacturers, suppliers, should be emphasized and should be made very important for the successful collaboration. Sabi nga, there's no one solution to the problem. And since very complex, we also need very proper, very effective collaboration. Per Ms. Yang, let's be agile and responsive. And for us pharmacists, let's take the challenge and do our part to mitigate drug shortage, to be able to provide the best patient care we can. So thank you everyone. Super ingat, take care.
Thank you so much, Mom Tess. So just a few reminders for our participants. So please answer the post-event evaluation tonight only until 11:59 p.m. So after that, the link will close and we will not accept evaluations anymore. So only those who will complete the post-event evaluation will receive certificates. So please take a screenshot of the slide so that you have a copy of the link, which we also posted in the chat box. To receive FAPA certificate by email, just wait for it. Within 5 working days, we will be sending it to your emails that you will put in the evaluation form. And for the PPHA certificate for Filipino participants, there will be CPD units, but this will be available only when TRC approval is received. So this will still be announced through official channels of PPHA. So I think there are questions also for the past 4 webinars. So I think it's the same situation. So only those who completed the post-event survey will be given a certificate from PPHA, but they will only release this once they have received approval from PRC. So please just stand by and follow the official Facebook pages to get updates. So I hope you learned a lot from this afternoon and this evening. Thank you very much to all our organizing committee, our speakers, our panelists, and of course, our participants from the Philippines and in other countries. So thank you very much. Have a good Friday evening and enjoy the rest of the weekend. Thank you very much. For the speakers, are you still here? Do you want to take a group photo? We can still have a group photo. And also the panelists.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, everyone.
I'll
Thank
do
you
the spotlight.
everyone.
Okay.
Paki-spotlight na lang po, ma'am.
Spotlight lahat. Can you? Ang dami. Andali Ang dami. Okay.
Dr. Chang, thank you so much.
Can you turn on your...
Dr. Chang, thank you so much for staying and really
still here.
Still here.
Thank you, Dr. Chang. Thank you, Miss
Vivian.
Vivian, Miss Yang, and Miss Yoli.
Who else is not here?
Miss Diane and Miss Joy.
Si Dr. Meme, andyan pa?
Wala na yata.
Actually, she's logged out. Yeah.
So, wala. Tayo na lang. Okay.
Okay.
Okay na po, ma'am. Are we okay?
Teka, alisin mo yung chat. Yeah, game.
Okay. All right. At the count of 3, 1, 2, 3. Okay. Sandali po. I'll just put Ma'am Montejo on spotlight. All right. Okay, another one. Okay, 1, 2, 3. And 1, 2, 3. Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye. Ingat.
Bye, ingat.
And for everybody.